Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and a happy new year. I've been off air for a couple of weeks, partly because, mostly because it's been the family festive season, and I didn't want to interrupt your celebrations on the previous two Saturdays, of course, but also because I've been suffering from COVID second bout, but I seem to have recovered from it now. Anyway, this evening we have a wonderful guest in the form of Dr. Lucy Rogers, who turns out to be a kindred spirit. She's an inventor, she's an entrepreneur, she's a visiting professor at, I think it's Brunel University on the west of London, you know. And so we had a good chat. I hope you'll enjoy it too. I'm going to screen it for you now. And if you're interested enough to comment and question with me, I'm live here, but she isn't because she wasn't available tonight. So here we go with the stream that we recorded earlier. So welcome, Lucy, to our FreeThought Hour show.
Thank you.
And you're a very interesting person. I've never had anybody quite like you on the show. Because you describe yourself as an engineer and innovation consultant. That's quite a unique description. I haven't seen any adverts for job vacancies of that sort.
No, it has been an interesting career that I've had to sort of like forge the way myself. It's not something that the careers advisor pushed me in the direction of.
No. And in your profile pic, you're brandishing a drill, an electric drill, as if it's a gun, which is always a very tempting thing to do, isn't it?
It is. It was there, wasn't it?
Yeah, the shape is a giveaway. But I also love your golden jacket.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
That's definitely a trademark of some sort. I'm not sure what. So tell us, what is it you actually do?
Oh, it depends on who's asking and why. But I'm an engineer by training. And so I use that training to solve problems. So if someone has a fun problem, I can actually make a solution for it. And it depends whose the problem is and what it's for. I then can write up in a recipe or a how-to, how someone else can also make what I have made. So that's one of the things I do, but I also advise companies on innovation and tech. Say, yep, that's a perpetual motion machine, or yes, that's actually an idea. Go with it, and I write stuff.
Excellent. So yeah, perpetual motion machines. How many of those have been invented? I don't know.
Many patents for those.
Yes. Going back to the early days of patenting. I'm sure there are, yes. But before we knew that they weren't possible. I've got a patent, or at least I used to have a patent.
Oh, what was your patent in?
Well, I'm a retired science teacher, and my first wife was a primary school teacher. Sadly, she died many years ago from cancer. But she and I used to help children learn to read, and so I learned how to teach reading. And this meant that I thought about it in a slightly different way from, teachers who have been trained to teach reading. So I brought my innovative ideas to the table and thought, is there a gadget that can actually help children to do this? And so I made what I thought might be a useful tool. I haven't got one to show you anymore. I'm afraid I sold them all. But it's, if you can imagine, a sugar tongs.
Yep.
Yeah. Now I want you to turn the spoons flat. So that it's tongs like that. Yeah. And I want you to make it transparent. But with a translucent colored part at the end. Yeah. So that what you can do with it is you can put it on a piece of text. It's only about the size of a pair of sugar tongs. Yeah. You can put it on a piece of text and use it to open up and reveal a piece of a word between the shaded parts. So what it does is it enables you to physically chop up multi-syllable words into little 3-letter parts.
Yeah.
So
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of the children loved it, because the tendency is, especially with boys, is to learn, the cat sat on the mat, and think that they've then cracked reading and go off and climb a tree or play football. But of course they haven't. They come to the big words and they don't know where to begin. And this turned the big words into little words for them.
I might need one of those. I've been learning German and reading German. There's an awfully long words. So, okay, where do I break this? Where do I start?
Yes. Gesellschaftshausen and all that sort of stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
They're famous at making phrases into single words.
Yes. Just yes.
Anyway, I succeeded in getting a patent for this, and we pulled up to make it as an injection molding item. And I went round to the education shows, not conferences, but conventions, where all the teachers go to see what's new, and all the manufacturers and organizations have a stall. And so it was those events. I did that for a few years, and I sold them off the stand. And I got it into a catalogue, these massively thick catalogues.
Oh, of course, back in the day.
Yeah, they don't exist now because it's all online. But actually, at the time, there were these thick catalogues, and it was in one of those. I sold about 10,000 of the things, and I haven't got any more of them left. And unfortunately, let me tell you something about patenting. It sucks you in, because at the beginning, you can go through the process of getting a patent very cheaply.
Okay.
But then subsequently, renewals go up, like exponentially. So you can,
keeping it's hard.
Yeah, the assumption is that you've made a fortune by year 3, and that then you can afford to pay a lot to hang on to your idea. Of course, this isn't always true. But so it's a few £100s to get a patent, and then by year 3 it's about £20,000. And at that point it doesn't become a profitable enterprise. And this was alongside the fact that although initially I had to buy a particular resilient type of plastic. You'll be interested in this, being into materials, but obviously you don't want a plastic which will fall apart after a few uses. It's got to be, and this particular gadget, you could get hold of it and screw it up and it would still go back into shape, because this was a particular form of nylon. And initially they'd let me have a small quantity of it, but after a few years the manufacturers of that particular plastic didn't want to sell any less than a ton. So, bearing in mind that my gadget, which was called a Word Whiz, Word Whizzer, let me think of it. This is some years ago, I've forgotten what it was. But bearing in mind that it weighed 10 grams, I would have needed a huge warehouse just to stock the quantity that I would have made from a ton of that material. So it died a death, I'm afraid. But it was fun while it lasted.
So most of my stuff is open source, because I bring on so many different ideas. So one of the things I made was a fartometer, and I was it was a ping pong ball on a matchbox and some electronics with a LED in the ping pong ball, and there was a sensor in one room. And it meant that if there was a bad smell in one room, a little light could go off somewhere else. It was an Internet of Things device, so it's all connected to the cloud. But a lot of the software was written by a friend of mine. And we do this deal where I write up my lab notes and publish them to say, okay, this is the code that we use. This is how we did it. These were the parts. You can all assemble it like this, make your own one. And it's actually an idea for, you probably don't want a fartometer. Actually, nowadays, you probably do want a carbon dioxide monitor, but you might want to put something else connected to the internet, or you might want to do something else with it. And so I publish them as open source stuff, because I borrow ideas from a lot of other people, and they come back a few years later and say, we did a thing. What was it and how did we do it? And I say, Here's the website for it.
Yes, yeah, interesting. So how did it detect smell?
I was actually using a pre-bought sensor. It was a USB sensor, so I was already using that. It was sold as a VOCC, volatile organic compounds sensor. And so I was, what can I use it for? And I'm blaming the cat, and I'm sticking with my story that yes, the cat, it suddenly went red. So what? Why has that suddenly gone red? Because I was having to use the the eye wipe, the glasses wipes. You can buy a little to get the smell to turn it off, and it suddenly went red. I was like, what's going on? And then this cat whiff hit me. I was like, oh, that.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the main reasons that the Queen keeps corgis, I think.
Okay. I'll take your word on that. I'd actually got it onto IBM's website. It was on their homepage, and it's the only time that the word fart has appeared on the IBM's homepage.
Really? Oh, that's an achievement in itself. There is a story about the Queen who was in a parade in one of the coaches, going through the centre of London, and she had alongside her guest was a foreign dignitary who I can't remember who he particularly was, but he let off. And he turned to Her Majesty and said, I beg your pardon, Your Majesty. And she said, well, you shouldn't have said anything. I would have thought it was one of the horses.
Quite.
Yes.
Plausible deniability or something.
Yeah. They have their usefulness, don't they, animals?
Oh, yes.
So, information synthesizer, what is that? Another of your talents.
I like seeing an idea that's over there, seeing an idea that's over there, talking to those people and actually bringing those things together to make something that neither the person over there nor the person over there would have actually thought about, and then sort of molding them into something and say, here's a thing. Yes. Here's a new thing, taking these two different ideas.
Yes.
So one of them was I was working with a dressmaker, and she made bespoke dresses. Didn't want to take them, take so many dresses around the world to all these shows. And so she made small dresses, 8 inches big. And she said, I need a dressmaker's mannequin to show these things off, because when they're flat, they don't look anything. Something on a coat hanger doesn't look the same as something on a model. No. And she said, but all the dolls, well, they're not human shaped if you actually look at them. So I need something that's human shaped. And so
somebody has a lot to answer for.
Indeed. So I ended up using some gaming software where you could actually make the chest size, the waist size, the bum size, and change it all into a 3D image, and then I could 3D print it. So I 3D printed these little mannequins for her.
Yes, perfect. What a good idea. So it's smashing together two ideas to make a new one. It's excellent.
Yeah, looking around, keeping my eyes open to all different areas and not just in my own field, and seeing what's out there and what could I do with that. How could I use it for something it wasn't designed for?
Yes. Thinking outside the box. You're very much a kindred spirit, because I've lived a lifetime of doing this sort of thing. Because one of my earlier inventions was a Bunsen burner tidy stand. Because I don't know if you've been in a science classroom laboratory lately, but you have these Bunsen burners with a rubber hose on them, and there's no way of keeping them sensibly. So you put them in a drawer, and then you find that one of them stands up, and you can't open the drawer because it's gone vertical. And then when you do manage to get the drawer open and you try and get one out, you find that all their hoses are tangled together. So you get the whole drawer out. So I thought what we need is some way of storing these that they can be retrieved from easily. So I invented it was a drain pipe with holes drilled through it, where you could poke the tube of the Bunsen burners, and you could get a series of them. They interlinked,
Oh, nice,
And my father actually tooled up some equipment to do this with 4 electric drills, and you could operate them,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that
One pillar drill with 4 drills. Yeah.
exactly. Yes, yes.
Nice.
And there was a template, no, not a template, a former, no, whatever you call that thing that you put something in to hold it while you machine it.
Jig.
Jig, that's the word, jig.
Yeah.
Yes. So we turned it round and we got these things drilled, and I put a few of them up in my personal laboratory and my friends, my colleagues' classroom. But that building's actually burned down now. So this was just another idea which I had. And I've also, although this isn't supposed to be about me, it's supposed to be about you. But just let me tell you that I was also one of the first people to produce an electric vehicle. Back in
I was going to say, you're not 1800 something. Come on, there were electric vehicles back then.
No, I am old, but not that old. But this was back in 1999, when I could link you to a picture of this on the internet. It was available digital photography. We didn't have smartphones, and we couldn't take digital video. But I managed to find somebody who had one of the rare digital cameras to take a few pictures of me. But it was based on the Isetta Bubble Car, which you're obviously too young to remember.
Oh, it's a classic, though.
Yeah, and it had a front opening door.
Yes, you had to sort of climb in over the bumper.
Yeah, yes, that's right. Yes, actually, the bumper came away with the door. But anyway, this is still in my garage now because I electrified it, and it did. Because you see, what I wanted at the time, people said you can't make an electric car because it can't compete with the performance of a petrol-driven.
This must have been after the C5.
Yes.
C5, yes.
Yes, it was.
Which sort of killed a lot of that innovation for a while.
I'm afraid it did. Yes, yes. But my situation at the time meant that I lived 3 miles away from the school where I was then working, and it was flat land all the way, and it was all within a 30-mile-an-hour limit. So you didn't need any great speed or great range. So what I did was I used the best technology of lead acid batteries, because of course the current generation of batteries hadn't been invented. And it gave me about 35 miles an hour and about 35 miles range, which took me to, I live near Worthing, so it took me to Worthing to go shopping, for example. And so there I had, I can claim to be, I think, something of an inventor based on track record like that.
Sounds good to me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your endorsement. So community makers, another of your biog claims. Tell me about that.
Well, it's all accidental, really. I started something
Isn't life like that? Interrupting you, I want to tell you about the saying of John Lennon, who said, "Life is what happens when you're making other plans."
Quite right.
Yes.
But also, opportunities occur when luck meets preparation, which is a twist on Seneca's version. But
indeed, yeah.
So I made a maker's hour. So people who make things, from electronics to craft to all sorts of bits and pieces. We call ourselves makers, and with hashtag makers hour on a Wednesday at 8 p.m, I was like, who else is out there? And the first question of the evening was always, who are you? Where are you? What have you made?
Yes,
and then the other questions would be, what is your favorite tool, or all sorts of questions, and spread out about 5 or 6 questions over the hour. And then people started joining in. And then we'd have different guest hosts, and they'd ask their own questions, always starting on the first one, always ending on, what is your Etsy blog, shop, whatever, what it is you make. Do some self-publicity here.
Yes, a plug.
It's a plug, yeah. And so that I must have started 4 or 5 years ago. It's still going on. Other hosts are now doing it. So basically, other people are running it, but it's still a community there. But from that, I realized that there were a lot of makers out there, and I wanted a like an institution of mechanical engineers, but for makers. So I wanted to be, yes, you've got a qualification in making, because you could get the Guild of Woodturners or the Guild of Embroiderists or something, but nothing for a generic maker.
Yes.
So that was what. So I started this community, Guild of Makers, and we ended up with over 200 people across the world, all joining in. The Guild of Makers sadly didn't quite work as I was hoping. Other priorities came in, but the community is still there. The Makers Hour is still going on. So we've got about, I don't know, probably 300-400 now across the world doing that. Excellent. I also did something similar many years before with, when the International Space Station goes overhead and you can actually see that there's a pinpoint of light.
Yes.
We were having a ISS wave. And so you could go out and wave at the ISS as it came over. And then if you put your postcode in, it would plot it on a map. And again, around the world, you'd have different people going, oh, I'm waving at the space station. I'm waving at the space station as it went round at different times. So that was another community of everyone looking at the space station. And another one I've done, the European Space Agency last year put a call out for astronauts. And in 2008, I applied to be an astronaut, but I didn't know anyone else who'd applied. And looking through my CV, I'm thinking, I can see why they didn't invite you to the next stage, Lucy. Yeah, I wouldn't have done with some of those things in my CV. So I wanted someone to check. I was going to apply this time. I wanted someone to check my CV. So I said, who else is out there? Who else is there? So I ended up setting up a Discord group of women who had applied to be astronauts or were thinking of applying to be astronauts. And I was thinking maybe we'll get 5 or 10 people and we can all swap CVs and that'd be good. 350 women later have all joined in this group discussion. Excellent things of, what do you think they mean by this question? Or I've done this and this, but it's just normal every day for me. And everyone else is going, oh, you've done what? Oh wow, that's amazing. Put it in. Yes. And it's been an absolutely amazing, wonderful journey of a lot of different people all over Europe. And actually they've got citizenship of a European country, but they're all over the world. Just saying who's doing what, how are we doing? Is everyone still at the nail biting stage? Are we waiting to hear? Has anyone heard yet? What do they think they mean by this? Oh,
well, I hope
it's been really good.
I hope that some of your members succeed.
I'm hoping so too.
Yes, fantastic.
I'm actually hoping that there's going to be 350 of ours going through to be astronauts, but apparently there's only going to be 4 astronauts, so maybe not.
Yeah, but it's easier today, isn't it? Because now we have Bezos and the other guy, Musk.
We're talking career astronauts rather than touristing astronauts. So these ones are from the European Space Agency. 22,000 people still applied, though.
Yeah, but there's a fallback position if you just want to.
There is, if you're rich.
Go for the trip. Yes. So what's interesting is that some of these sorts of activities have now become televisual, haven't they? I mean, we've got a couple of shows that I'm thinking of that are a bit like your Makers Guild idea, which is the repair shop, where it's not making, it's repairing, obviously, and remaking, if you like. And then there's these shows where somebody goes to a dump and comes back with something and repurposes it into a new product. So I think there's a growing field here, isn't there?
There definitely is. I mean, the TV, as far as I can really work out, they want the beautiful things. I make stuff that's Heath Robinson. It's fixed. It's that works. It'll do. Well, but it's not on the beautiful side. Whereas a lot of these repair shops, they are absolutely stunningly beautiful.
They are fantastic.
Eye candy for TV, which is great.
Oh, yes. But YouTube actually has more clunky things as well. I mean, I watched one a little while ago where a man, it was a cut and shut video down to about 15 minutes. And what he did was he made an instrument out of just slats of wood. And it had a bass fingerboard and I think it was a 3-string guitar fingerboard, and also one of those sort of like a musical box where you can plink plunk on
yeah.
the bent pieces of metal, and had electric pickups, mostly from Gibson guitars and things. And so he created this, and it was all just crisscross bits of wood screwed together. But it worked very well, and in the end, he got an actual, skillful player to play something on it. And so on YouTube, you don't need to be quite so much eye candy.
It's true. Depends if you need to make a living or not.
Well, yes, indeed. Yes, it always helps having independent means.
Yes, indeed.
So you've also been a Robot Wars judge. Now that's proper television.
That was BBC Two.
Yeah, tell us about that.
How
did that happen? What was it like?
It happened because one of my friends got asked, and she said, that's not really my thing, but have you tried Lucy? Because she's worked with robot dinosaurs at a theme park on the Isle of Wight. So I got the call, and yes, I'd love to go and be a judge. Thank you very much. So there were three of us sitting up there. And to be honest, I had a bit of the imposter syndrome, because the other judges was a professor of robotics, and there was a professor of artificial intelligence, and I was a renowned engineer. It's like, I didn't have I'm now a visiting professor, but I didn't have that at the time.
Yes.
And it took a while before I realised, when they finally said, "Oh, can you show one of the presenters how to use the tools that the roboteers are using to make some of their stuff?" So that was me with an angle grinder in my hand, teaching Angela Scanlon how to use this angle grinder. And that was the point where not just the production team, but all the roboteers said, "Oh, you came to life with that in your hand. You were solid and stayed beforehand, but as soon as you put an angle grinder in your hand, you were relaxed." And all the roboteers said, "Oh, you're one of us." And so then I realized that I was actually on the judging team to be part of, I was the maker. I was understood making and how these things actually got made, rather than just the academic side. Of how it all worked. And so watching these things, and it was heartbreaking for me, because you could see the hours and the time that people put into making these things, and then they get into the arena. Not so bad that they got into a fight and got smashed up, but it was working in the pits. It was working. You put it in the arena and nothing happened. It's like,
yes. Well, that's all very interesting. You were the hands-on person out of the judges then. You were...
I mean, the others had done some and did know it, but I was more...
But whereas they were more theory-based, you were the practical side of things. Yeah, excellent. I hope that these shows are still available on iPlayer.
They keep getting shown.
Yes, because iPlayer goes in and out, doesn't it? They put things up and then take them down again. Yeah. Well, I will look out for them. Yes, I watched a few Robot Wars, but then I had other things to do, I suppose.
Yes.
They didn't hook me. Yeah. So you mentioned robot dinosaurs on the Isle of Wight. Well, now you're talking about Black Gang Chine, aren't you?
I am talking Black Gang Chine. Yeah.
Yes. And animatronics too.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in the 70s, Blue Peter followed some fiberglass dinosaurs being made up in Yorkshire, and then John Noakes travelled with them, I think, down to the Isle of Wight, where this theme park is on a cliff edge.
Yes.
And they couldn't get the truck down to where these dinosaurs were going, and they had to put them in by helicopter. So back in the 70s, every child who ever watched Blue Peter and heard it in the playground knew about Black Gang Chine and their dinosaurs.
Yes,
and these were, you look at them now, and some of these dinosaurs are not what scientists say dinosaurs look like nowadays. But so 2012, about then, they decided that these dinosaurs from the 70s are looking a little bit old and tattered. We'll do up some of the old favourites. So there's a Stegosaurus that you can climb on and things.
Yes, that's right.
They
don't animate anymore.
No. Well, the 70s ones never did. They were just fiberglass and stuck. But they got in some robot dinosaurs. And great fanfare. This is our dinosaur area. Brilliant use of planting and soundscape. So you actually walked through, and you felt like you were walking through the film, Jurassic Park.
Bits of the theme park fell off the cliff periodically, and they had to redesign it.
They do, yes.
Yeah. I've taken several of my children there over the years, and I am from the Isle of Wight myself. That's where I was born, so I claim to have been
You're
born.
a corkhead.
You could say that. That's one of the descriptions that we've been given. Yes, because the story.
My dog.
Sorry?
My dog. I used to live there, so when I got my puppy, she was born there.
All right. So she was a corkhead as well, yeah. So the story behind that is that when they were building wooden ships in Portsmouth, they needed some cheap labor to actually poke the tar into the gaps between the planks to waterproof them, and that was called caulking. And people came from the Isle of Wight to do that. Yeah. So I just claim that I was born overseas and leave people to wonder where I originated from. So
you're now on the North Island, are you then?
Yes, you could say that. That's right. Yes. I made it all the way to Sussex. Yeah. So if you want animatronic dinosaurs, you've got to go to the Natural History Museum, where I've also taken my children, and they've been scared because
Black Gang now has animatronic dinosaurs.
Yes, they're so realistic.
Yes,
and quite terrifying if you're young and impressionable.
Yes, one of the projects that we're still trying to work on is to get these animatronic dinosaurs to actually fixate on one person and then follow them, and then as they come into the next, chat to the next dinosaurs along. And
yes.
Then at midday they all put their heads up and roar or something. It's dinner time.
Yes, well, that's all possible now, isn't it? With
the hard thing I've been finding when I've been doing it is it's different daylight, because it's all outside. You can do it inside because you can control the lighting, but a bright sunny day or in the evening in the winter, it's different light conditions, and that makes it harder.
Yes. Well, I've got a gadget which you put your phone on and it does face tracking, and while you're making a recording it follows you, and it's quite spooky. Something else that my daughter's scared of. The wonders of technology and science. I love it. So, communications and creativity at Brunel University. Visiting professor. How do you get to be that? Because for the Americans in my audience, I'd like to point out that it's quite hard to be a professor in this country, whereas in the US of A, anybody who does a bit of lecturing is designated a professor or an assistant professor. Whereas professor is sort of top dog of quite a hierarchy, isn't it?
It is in the UK, but I'm not in academia. But the Royal Academy of Engineering have seen that there's a academics haven't often been in industry, and industry don't often spend time in academia. And so they've set up this visiting professor scheme where people from engineers from industry can go in for a few years and teach the students on things that are relevant in industry. And for my subject, I know that engineers are not renowned for our communication skills. It's not one of the things we're known for. And so actually being able to communicate with non-engineers is really useful. And so when I was a teenager, or even when I was at university, I thought, here's my report, it says it all, there you go, what more do you need? I was so wrong. So I had to learn how to communicate with people who weren't engineers, and because I've had to learn it and it didn't come naturally to me, I have got a whole list of hints and tips of how to do that. And so I've been teaching these students. I've been putting them on my YouTube channel as well.
Are these available, these hints and tips?
On my YouTube channel, search for my name, Dr. Lucy Rogers, and communication skills, and some of those are there. And the same with creativity, where it's basically bashed out of us at school, I think, playtime is allowed when you're very little, but then after that it's like 2 + 2 is 4 and it can't be anything else.
Yes, it's all exam driven. I so agree, and I do regret the way education has gone over the last several decades, because getting back to the early days when I started science teaching, you could do stuff which was magic. I mean, I used to, I'm so old that the gas that came out of our gas taps in those days was actual town gas, you know, which is, you'll know the process. It's made from steam hitting coke, red hot coke. And so it contains quite a lot of hydrogen from, you know, the broken up water. So it's lighter than air. And so what I used to do back then was I used to stick a hose on the gas tap with a thistle funnel in the end, dip it in some bubble mixture, and then blow a very large bubble of town gas. And I used to have the naughtiest boy in the class standing on the bench with a lighted taper. So I would shake this bubble off the thistle funnel, and it would wobble slowly upwards. And I would say, now, and he would stick the flaming taper into it, and the flame would continue to go up until it left a blackened mark on the ceiling. and of course, that turned me into a hero.
Obviously,
I had amazing class control after that. They all wanted to come to my lesson, but you can't do that. We've had HSE.
And for good reason in many cases, to be fair.
Granted, yes. The building where I used to do that did burn down, but not thanks to me. It was some arsonist, some child who was had a grievance against the school. But yes, I recognise the need for HSE, and I wouldn't want to turn it all the way back to there. But it has stifled a lot of what used to be done as fun. I mean, you can't dissect a frog anymore.
You did that for fun?
Well, no, but you did it. It was seen as an exciting thing to do as part of a biology lesson, you know, but it's all of that's gone now. So it's turned into open your books to page 43 and read about Newton's laws or something like that. It's a shame.
I found that with creativity, we're never encouraged to fail, and therefore we don't learn how to fail safely. Yes. And I found that by trying things that aren't actually related to my work at all. So I learned how to slackline. So, you know, these like a tightrope walk, but a thick thing that is bowed. And yeah, I videoed this and put it on TikTok. I think I was putting it on at the time. And you know, my first time I stood up, and my leg was like a sewing machine. It was like, I'm not staying on this. And by the end of the summer, I was walking up and a little bit down on this slack line. But it gave me the beginner's mindset of, okay, I do this, and it doesn't matter if I fail. And if I fail, you know, I've made sure I'm not going to fall into the rose bush. I'm made sure I'm not going to fall onto the dog. I've learned how to fail safely. And those things always come through into other parts of your life. Now, I'm not suggesting that we learn how to fail on, you know, oh, I've made some car brakes and look, they fail. You know, that's not quite what I'm talking about. But it's learning how to push the boundaries safely and see how you can do it.
Yeah, failure isn't something to be ashamed of. It's how we learn. Yeah.
You imagine a toddler, oh, I'm not going to try that walking thing again. I fell over last time and everyone laughed at me. I'm not doing that.
Well, you remind me of when one of my daughters learned to walk, and she used to do it with her hands out for fear of falling over. But you're right. Without failure, we would never have got to where we are today. Because the first time that a rocket blew up on the launch pad, we would have gone away and said, not trying that again.
Yeah.
So we definitely need failure. So what will be your message to 2022 if you wanted to, you know, send out a piece of advice to the world?
Ooh, to the world. Keep trying, keep failing. That's all very trite, isn't it? Try the things. Yes. Don't self-select. Don't self-determine that I can't do that. There were things you know, when I was a child, I was a tomboy and I used to chase the ballet girls with a spider in a matchbox or something. And I was like, I'm ballet. I could never do that. I'd never do that. I never do that. But it turned out that in my village, the only keep fit class was a ballet class. So off I went to it and absolutely loved it. So it's all these things that you put your own blinkers on. I couldn't possibly.
Well, that's right.
22,000 people have applied to be an astronaut. I'm not going to be an astronaut. I couldn't possibly. But if I don't apply, I won't be.
Won't, no.
And let them make the decision. Let them make that decision.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy not to attempt anything, isn't it? Yeah. And it reminds me of a child with a very minimal diet, not wishing to try curry for fear that it might be revolting. I had a son like that who now it's his favorite food and he attempts to cook it all the time. But initially he took a bowl of rice and I think he put 1 teaspoonful of curry on for fear that it might be something poisonous. Well, there you go. So what if I could give you a magic wand? What would you with I don't know how many wishes you want, but what would you do to try and improve the world from what it's been up till now, 2021, which was pretty rank, let's face it. How would you where would you wave your wand to make an improvement?
That's an interesting question, but I think it'd have to be on working out how we can fix the planet, save the planet. Whether we save the humans, I won't save the planet. Humans may be a good afterthought. Yeah.
Well, save the woodlice. They're easier to save, and those things. What are they called? That have survived in space and funny-looking things. Can't remember.
You mean cockroaches?
No, not those. But these funny-looking.
Don't call astronauts funny little things.
Okay. Well, before I get myself into deeper trouble, I think we better call that it. Thank you very much, Lucy. You've been fantastic, just as I thought you would be.
No problem.
And thank you very much to our viewers who will see this when it turns into a podcast on Saturday evening, whatever it is, the 9th of the 8th, I think. The 8th of January. So
wonderful.
Thank you very much. And
no problem.
Bye-bye. What a lovely lady. As you can tell, I really enjoyed that conversation. And I hope you did too, anybody who's watching this in the future when it's a podcast. So we've got a few minutes left before the end of FreeThought Hour. And I thought I would show you some of the things that we've been talking about in that 40-minute show. So, for example, I've managed to find the electric vehicle that I was talking about to Lucy. And here it is. You can see that it's a plastic replica Isetta Bubble Car. And it's got a Lynch motor, which is it's a flat. They call them pancake motors, and it's got 48 volts of the state-of-the-art lead-acid batteries way back then. And you can see me in it at the driving wheel, and I've got a passenger there and 2 escorts who, because it was never completed, unfortunately. So it's on trade plates that I borrowed for the occasion. There you are. It actually did exist, and it's still in my garage, increasingly covered in dust. So the other thing that I was referring to in the show is the word whizzer, the reading tool. And I've dug around in my old computers and I've unearthed this video, which I'm going to try and play to you now. Is it going to go? Here we go. There's no sound. So there it is, being a line tracker, following underneath the words. And now it's going to be an overlay so you can look through the tint. And there it is doing a dissection, highlighting a syllable or 2 or 3 to build the words up. It's quite a cunning device. I was quite pleased with that. And as I said, I sold 10,000 of them. Get that off. Right. Okay. So there were some other things too that going back in my long history, I had a a special pencil that maybe I'll save that and show you that another time. Anyway, this is it. What's that doing? Keep existing file. Yep. So I'm going to call it a day now. And next week, I've got lined up another interesting guest. It's either an ex-GP who's turned into a paleontologist and who recently has discovered some huge dinosaur bones. Again, it's on the Isle of Wight, as it should happen. And so he's coming on my show in the near future, possibly next week. We haven't actually finalized the date yet. And his main mission at the moment is to save Dinosaur Isle Museum, because the council there have short-sightedly defunded it. So we must do something about that. So I've got some other people lined up for the future, and we will be doing this every Saturday into as long as we like to think. And that is that. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to play the outro. Bye-bye.